Okay, I've given everybody a day to process the Bundy Ranch situation and give us their analysis, and it's time for me to do my deconstruction now. I have watched the entire event from minute one. I covered, or I kind of cover, but looked at everybody's coverage of this event. Everybody from An American Warning TV to Alex Jones to Pete Santilli, obviously. I can't believe I saw. I knew something was up the moment I saw Pete Santilli on Next News Network. I was like, you know what? Okay. But yeah, let's talk real about what actually is going on, what actually happened, and where we're at in the grander scheme of things. Now, obviously, this land, Harry Reid's a crook. China's a New World Order laboratory. They want to farm this out they want to farm it all out to China eventually. That way they get the premium fucking metrics off of it. You know, it's like even letting just, U.S. slave scum citizens, we just, you don't, even letting your viceroys that are still in the United States have these, these assets is bad. It's bad form. We gotta shove everything to China. We can't allow the United States to have anything. So it's got to be shoved off anywhere we can. China, Mexico, doesn't matter. Even if there were exploitable deposits, we'll go to Peru, we'll go to Mongolia, it doesn't matter. Fuck logistical costs, right? We're talking about people who created a $4 quadrillion fucking debt hologram out of derivatives, with HFT ion cannon arrays. You know what I mean? You're not dealing with a bunch of people. And by the way, they're murked up. They developed the first quantum computers and put it directly into the DoD. Everybody's like, got their panties in a bunch over heartbleed. Meanwhile, they could brute force strong encryption with quantum computers. Just because you're not aware of the extents to which this technology has been taken does not mean that you shouldn't be able to ascertain from what's commercially available that such capacities are possible. Anyway, I digress. Hydrocarbons, minerals. This all ties into the Western resource recovery sector destroyed by design. Obviously, it's also about the agri sector being destroyed by design. Well, guess what? Chinese imports of U.S. corn have plummeted. Just as I say this, the story broke maybe the last 2 days. I think it was like 60%, something like that. Doesn't matter. Point is, I'm sorry. It's actually an 85% drop in U.S. corn exports to China. I apologize. It wasn't a final 60% drop after multiple successive years of drops. It's an 85% drop. So 85% of the pittance we had left over of exports to China. I don't know, man. When you can't even export your corn to China, folks, you might want to start to try to figure out that this is a problem that is much larger than one guy's ranch. Although, yeah, if you want to wonder why fucking beef prices are an all-time high, by the way, there's no inflation. If you say there's inflation, you're a racist and you're with Al-Qaeda. Nobody wants our GMO crap, and we've been convinced that this is the only way you can farm. Meanwhile, the biology and physics and chemistry of the very methodology of this GMO chemical farming is breaking down because of the diminishing returns that are inherently built into it. Guess what doesn't have diminishing returns, moron? Nature. Nature, trillions of years of evolved nature does not have these same diminishing returns built in. I digress. What we need is truly 21st century thinking about the nature of farming, and we need to look at things like food forests and consider a broad spectrum biological topology as being the ultimate, evolution of the soil, insect, plant biome, however you want to look at it. We could figure it out. We've decided to be lazy and try to do it the easy way, but it's these, as Aaron Dykes recently said, it's these shortcuts that kill us. Now, Everybody is, gosh, everybody's so happy. They're so pleased with themselves over this BLM standoff. And I don't want to shit on all the noble people. The last thing I want to do is shit on all of the noble people who turned up and risked their asses. You know what I mean? But, and there's a huge caveat here, this is pathetic. We have won the battle and we're going to lose the war. How do you think the BLM got their hands on 90% of the fucking state as it is? Guess where all our minerals come from historically? Not to say that there aren't minerals all over the rest of the fucking country. It's just you're not allowed to drill there because there's stuff there that people protect. You know? And here's the thing. You can regrow trees. You can regrow plants. You can farm animals and then release populations into the wild and repopulate areas, and the animals will get their instincts back really quickly. I mean, we have yet to even consider how to really handle our environment. Our technology has evolved so far under certain constraints in certain directions, and yet we've completely failed to even consider how to grow food and raise animals and care for the wildlife and have wild places. We don't even know how to break up we have yet to do even the rudimentary terraforming of our own nation, yet somehow we're out there policing the rest of the world for the sake of geopolitical stability. We don't need geopolitical stability anymore. We're living in an age where madmen have created all of these extremely dangerous things that are far more dangerous than nuclear annihilation. Yeah, nuclear annihilation is dangerous, but so is being eliminated by, GMO technology. Anyway, I was so far afield. They've ruined our agribusiness sector through GMO technology. Okay? Also, they've ruined it through the same sort of tainting and disintegration of the integrity of various other aspects of our food supply. And cattle would be one area. I mean, let's really look at the raw competitiveness of U.S. beef. Hang on a sec here. So, China and, other places not wanting our crap, right, is very telling. Because look at all the crap that comes out of China. All right? And the point, though, is look at how our markets are being destroyed by the globalists' mercantilist system. Look at how they've got UKIP all sidelonged up, ready to, their argument is, let's get out of the EU so that we can do a trade deal with China. I mean, it's like, oh, I just want to groan, But that's not wrong. It's not tactically wrong. I'm not saying they shouldn't be doing trade deals with China. It's just, do people not understand how they don't? Nobody understands how the world actually works because they don't have time to study the actual history of China. I'm going to just completely digress here before I get back to these points. Nobody studies the history of China. They don't study the political history of China. They don't study the cultural history of China. They don't study the commodities market history of China. They don't study the market history of China in general. And they don't care. And they would rather just... They don't. Nobody fucking has done any kind of real research or any kind of actual study. Or rather, they do this hypertrophied fucking research where it's like they get out a microscope and they look at one, two, three fucking companies, and then their analysis is like off of PDFs produced by the company themselves or something. And anyway, so people don't have any sense of Chinese history, or if they do have a sense of Chinese history, it's the textbook sense of Chinese history, like the average American has some bullshit. In other words, they're sheepletards. They have a sheepletard sense of history. But an actual sense of Chinese history will tell a completely different story, especially in the Sun Yat-sen, Chiang Kai-shek, Mao Zedong arc. The globalists cooked down and rebuilt China the way they've done to many, many other nations. Look at Indonesia under Suharto. That's another one. They've rebuilt the world. They've made these populations pliant. They've templated out the Western production model to where the human population has been rendered pliant. They used your blood and treasure to do it, and now you're being dismantled. The West is being dismantled. Western resource recovery sector, destroyed by design. Western agri sector, destroyed by design. there's no surprise. It's not surprising to anybody that Harry Reid's murked up with the Chi-Coms to put solar panels on this guy's land. But that is, as strange as it might sound, that is rather immaterial, because the overarching argument here is Agenda 21, and the only reason we have to make these sort of foreground arguments and show aspects of the foreground minutia, like Harry Reid and some dirty deal with some cylinder type, duh. Oh, really? Is that what's going on? I'm shocked. So you're saying that the fascistic crony capitalist system, they're doing a backroom deal so that they can fucking hand some shit off to their buddies and make a bunch of money? No, it's just, and all that stuff, all that metric is just the dogs need to be fed. The New World Order has an agenda, and they're into agenda implementation. And to implement the agenda around the world, you have to have viceroys, and your viceroys want to get paid. That's all it is. That's all it's ever been. And to analyze it any further beyond that is a waste of time. Just as it's really a waste of time to try to save this guy's land. Even though I commend everybody, it's a great PR stunt. It's an amazing PR stunt. I love it. It's also a great barometer of where our culture's at, and that's wonderful and should be celebrated. However, we're also a bunch of oorah fucking football head morons who think that this is how, honestly, people out there believe that it's still 1700 and that we're going to somehow defeat Northcom. Like we had the logistical capacity to simply show up every time there was a problem. While we were all out on a ranch, right? The other government forces and non-governmental forces were seizing the livelihoods and logistical capacities of millions of other Americans. We can't show up with AR-15s everywhere. Excuse me. These bastards come for us. It's just not possible. It's not logistically feasible to do so. This is the whole reason that you have government to begin with. Governments are instituted among men to protect our God-given rights. What is my primary argument here? My primary argument is this was wonderful, but we're retarded, and we're going to have won the battle, or we'll win this or that little battle and lose the war. What happened to the other ranchers? What happened to the rest of Nevada? How do you think the feds got their hands on 90% of the state to begin with? I mean, we have tons of undeveloped. We could be the #1 global gold producer if we wanted to, the United States. Why is China the #1 global gold producer? Well, it would take forever for me to explain the nuanced foreground logistics of it. So let me just say, Western Resource Recovery Sector destroyed by design. I mean, what do you want me to explain to you? If you have a year and a half to sit down and for me to go over on a company by company basis, and frankly, we'll be looking at shell companies a lot of the time. Again, you got to get the story behind the story, the history behind the history. You have to have a sense of actual Chinese history. Like, look at the Chinese hydrocarbon recovery sector. Now, we can sit here and talk about, everybody's like, here's a good analogy for the Bundy Ranch. Everybody's like, Iceland kicked out the bankers. This little tiny, it's nothing to begin with. And that's why it's a great test case. It's a nice little isolated test framework, Iceland. Geologically, culturally, economically isolated. It's a great little laboratory on its own. Everyone's like, they kicked the bankers out. There's a global cartel. And if you kick them off some tiny little fucking node somewhere, what do you think's going to happen, dummies? Like, you can just kick them off some tiny little node. So you've got CNOOC drilling the offshore hydrocarbons, right? CNOOC is China's main state-owned hydrocarbon recovery company and development company. Well, who the fuck created CNOOC? And everybody's like, well, Mao. It's the Chinese government. Yeah, but who created the Chinese hydrocarbon sector? Who created the Chinese hydrocarbon sector? The modern Chinese hydrocarbon sector. Who was it? Let's see. Who was it? I believe it was Standard Oil, basically. Oh, that's right. Yeah, I don't know. People don't want to bother to do the homework, though. They don't care. They don't. It's the New World Order. Just stop pussyfooting around and say the New World Order. The problem I have with most people in like the gold and silver community is that they lack the capacity or the balls. They either lack the capacity to understand